Sounds good. Okay, we are live on YouTube. So let me welcome all of you. First, Manoj, Mathew, and Ragu, Subbiah, and Rajan, Balasubramanian, welcome you all to the IGL webinar. So thank you for taking your time and sharing your experience in this forum. To IGL members as well as a number of college students and school students that we have shared this link. So this is the theme is technology, and we have been conducting IGL webinars just about every other week or so, bringing different topics and people from different fields of expertise, and the idea is to talk about their experience and share with others, especially for the next generation of students, as well as with teachers and lecturers in the colleges. So hopefully we'll spend some time on a variety of topics, just as you saw in the flyer. Manoj is going to be talking about his journey with the technology, and we have also known Manoj in the music for a while. So hopefully he'll combine the technology experience as well as the music experience, followed by Ragu, Subbiah. I've known Ragu for over 30 years now, and so he's going to be talking about what are the best ways of developing software in a distributed team. We have teams in different locations, and how do we manage the processes? How do we manage development activities when your team is spread across the globe? So then, last but not least, we have Rajan Balasubramanian. We've also known Rajan for a number of years, over 10 years or so now. So Rajan is going to be talking about an interesting topic on how to apply information technology onto manufacturing. So that's what we are planned for. And so what we'll do is so we'll go through each one of your presentations. So I'll invite each one of you to come on the stage and share your presentation, introduce yourself briefly, and talk about your experience and the topic that you want to cover today. And at the end of all three of your presentation, we'll come back to the panel. Then four of us will have a little discussion around all the topics that we covered. We may have questions among ourselves on the topics that we covered, so we'll cover some of that. And then I'll keep an eye on the audience questions that we'll be collecting it from the YouTube live, and then I'll pass it on to you as and when we come along. So that's how we'll conclude the session once we have completed all the sessions, and then the group discussion, and then questions from the audience. So that's the kind of an approximate format that we do IGL webinar. So with that, I'd like each one of you to maybe spend a few minutes on talking about introducing yourself. Maybe I'll start with Manoj. Could you please introduce yourself, and then followed by Ragu and Rajan.
Yeah, let me do that.
You can come to the presentation later on, but just a brief introduction about yourself, Manoj.
Yeah, even for that, I've
Oh, okay.
I prepared a slide for that, so it's easy for me to read as opposed to.
Sure.
But never mind. I have 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know what's going on, but. Okay, so my name, by the way, Manoj Mathew. I was born in Kottayam, the state of Kerala. I was just born in Kottayam, but my entire childhood was in Trichy, Tamil Nadu. So I would say that I just went to Kerala for vacations. That's it. So a lot of background as far as Tamil is concerned, and Tamil Nadu is concerned. My high schooling was primarily in Kendriya Vidyalaya, Trichy, an excellent environment for students, definitely in India. My graduate and postgraduate degrees, basically BSc in physics, and then masters in computer applications, both at St. Joseph's College in Trichy and in the premier institution. I was lucky to get the opportunity to join there. Then my professional career so far, about a little over 25 years in the IT industry. And most of it has been with a company called Intuit, here based in the Bay Area here in San Francisco. And as far as my extracurricular interests, it's primarily music, sports, personal finance, and then global affairs. That's it.
Very good. Thanks, Manoj. Thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah.
We'll hear from, I think you may share some of the, I think Ragu is also from Trichy, I believe. So there may be some common elements there. So we'll ask Ragu Subbiah to say a few words about himself before we move on to Rajan. Please, Ragu.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. So I'm Ragu Subbiah. So I was thinking when Manoj was talking, so we have a little bit of similarities, overlap. I am also a product of St. Joseph's, 1980 to 83. I did B in statistics. And I had an opportunity to do my master's in IIT Kanpur, MSc Stat. And then I started my software career. That's why I met Krishna. So we go a long way back, 1985. So 35 years now. Then I looked around, everybody was a formally software qualified, and whereas, I was the only one outsider kind of thing. Then I kind of worked, and then I got through GATE, and then I joined IIT Madras. I did my MTech Computer Science there. Then I rejoined Wipro. So Wipro Systems, then Wipro Information Technology. Then 1990, I had an opportunity to go to the US. So I was there for 16 years. Then we got reconnected with Krishna again. The last 15 years, I've been working with the Acrio, and I'm directly reporting to Krishna. And I returned in 2006. I've been living in Bangalore since. That's pretty much kind of worked on mostly in Silicon Valley, companies like Sun, Silicon Graphics, Verizon Wireless. Then 2015, I joined the Acrio, and ever since I've been with the Acrio. That's my background. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Ragu. Thanks for that introduction. Rajan, could you please introduce yourself? Unmute. Yeah. Unmute. Rajan, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, as you saw in the flyer, my name is Rajan Balasubramanian. I'm not an IT guy, never been one, but as you will see on the presentation, it's more about how I use IT in what I do. I'm more of an operations guy all my life. I've either been in engineering or in operations throughout my career. I was born in India, like both Manoj and Ragu. I was born in a town called Tirunelveli. Not sure how many people know that. It's a town in Tamil Nadu. It's a small town in Tamil Nadu. After my high school in Tirunelveli, I actually studied in Tamil medium till my 10th standard. I only switched to English in starting.
I did so too.
Same here.
Yeah. First batch of +1, +2.
Yeah. Then I went to BITS Pilani, worked in India for about 3 years. I didn't want to go to the US. I wanted to be in India. I just got bored of what I was doing in India, which is how come I ended up here. I worked in a company called Century Inca, one of the Birla companies in India. And then I worked in the oil field for a couple of years in an offshore oil rig. And then I came to the US, got my master's in chemical engineering. And then I did engineering consulting for a few years, and then moved back to manufacturing operations. And I'm currently a plant manager for Honeywell for two sites, two plants. We have a plant in Santa Clara where we make electronic polymers for the semiconductor industry. And then I also manage an R&D site in Sunnyvale. It's about a few miles. Both small sites. Anyway, that's my background. Happy to be here, and Krishna, thanks for giving me the opportunity of be of hopefully of some use to the students in India.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rajan. That's wonderful introduction from you as well. So what we'll do now is we'll have Manoj to take the stage. So we'll go in the background. We can turn off our video and then mute. So Manoj, please take away the stage and then please cover your topics. Thank you, Manoj. You can share your presentation. You should be able to do it now. You're on mute, so make sure that you unmute before you talk.
Really sorry about that. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
One second. Okay, so let me start with my, my journey as far as music is concerned. I have no formal training in music. I never had any, and that's where IGL plays a big role. I'll get into that soon. I listened to a ton of Tamil, Malayalam, and Hindi songs, when I was growing up, again in Trichy. The fact that, I was going to school in Kendra there at Trichy meant that there were a lot of, it was very cosmopolitan. So a lot of people from different parts of India were in that community where I lived and the school I went to. And hence the opportunity to listen to a lot of, these Hindi songs as well. In addition to Tamil, of course. Tamil goes without saying. If you live in Trichy, obviously, listen to a lot of Tamil songs. Malayalam songs only because my mom, she used to listen to a lot of these songs, and thus I also, started listening to those songs. And those songs have thus been, they've registered in my mind. But I never knew, so I never sang when during my childhood. He just lay there. I never knew that I had a passion. I never knew that I could sing. Of course, stage fright, shyness, all of that were factors in me not, singing at all earlier in my life. My music, I do remember my teacher at school saying that, okay, I do sing well, but I never took it seriously. So that, and then I sang my first song on stage in my late 30s. And this was in my church here in the US. And we used to go on these, Christmas carols in for every Christmas, right? And of course, those were group settings, where I was not singing alone, but in group settings. But in one of those years, there was this annual competition, I wouldn't say competition, but like a talent show at our church, and where somebody pushed me into, I shouldn't say encourage, but they pushed me, so to speak, into singing a song. And I sang my very first song. It was a Tamil song, and it was a duet. And and people, they were very supportive, in the or very receptive, I should say. After they heard my first song, I was a little astonished, to be honest. And then after that, I got an opportunity to participate in a Bay Area Tamil Mandram musical competition. That's where I met Krish. And he was, of course, one of the, I think he was primarily conducting the event, I would say. Of course, I didn't win the competition or whatever, but it was just, I had the confidence. By that time, I had the confidence to go and sing, at events like this. And that's where I met Krish. And then it was Krish who actually, and that's where our relationship started. And it's been terrific, I would say, as far as knowing Krish is concerned. And he gave that opportunity to sing in IGL. And IGL does become a major platform for me. So since 2014, I've been singing in various IGL events, private, public events, and of course non-IGL events as well, whether it be a church or other places as well. So I should really thank IGL for helping me discover my passion, and it has now become one of my primary passions and also one of my hobbies, so to speak. Previously, it was just sports and other things, but music now has become really integral, I would say, to my life, so to speak. So overall, I've sang over 70 songs over the past 6 years. And again, I would say IGL was the primary platform for it and the primary motivator as well for it. So a lot of thanks should go to Krish in this regard. Now, that was, in a nutshell, my journey. And I'm hoping it'll continue into the future. Now, I just wanted to share a few tips on how I prepare for a song. And again, this is based on what I read, what I've experienced, what I've heard from other people and things like that, right? So before I sing, I usually sing karaoke's, so only with karaoke's. And when I listen to the songs, I usually I listen to the original song about 15 times at least, a minimum 15 times, 20 times, just listening to the original song sang by the original singer, right? Just to make sure that I understand and document the lyrics accurately. And it doesn't matter which language it is, whether it's Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, doesn't matter. But in all the cases, of course, I write it in English. The lyrics are in English, but I make sure that it's accurate. And then I make sure that I try to understand the pronunciation of every single word. That's crucial. That the pronunciation is as accurate as possible to the original. And it varies from language to language, right? Malayalam, the way you say certain words, in Malayalam, it varies, from the way you say certain words in Tamil versus the way you say certain words in Hindi. And then there is the aspect of diction, which is understanding the emotion, the pitch, the tone, the range, and that's for every word. So, and then finally, also very important is to get familiar with the interlude music, the music between those, those lyrics as well. Especially when you sing karaoke, it's crucial because in the case of karaoke, you're kind of leading the karaoke track is what you're kind of leading you. As opposed to in a regular setting where, like these major singers, when they sing, the vocals actually, the orchestra essentially follows the vocals, right? So, but in this case, it's a little different. This is primarily the reason why I kind of listen to the original so many times, just to get it in my head as much as possible. And then one other thing I do is trying to make sure that I take precautions to ensure my voice is unimpacted before I go and sing. And again, this is to prevent, buildup of mucus in the vocal cords. They have to be moist, very moist, for a clear voice. Otherwise, the voice will be impacted and the clarity will be gone. And so what I do is I try to avoid dairy products, like drinking milk or coffee or tea during the day. The day I'm going to sing. Avoid fruits and any cold food or drinks. And this is how I kind of prepare. As a novice, this is what I've learned, and thought I'll share that with you guys. But I should, again, before I move forward or move on to the next topic, I do want to acknowledge the fact that Krish and IGL has played a key role in me discovering my passion. The other thing I also want to acknowledge is the recent demise of SP Balasubramanian. I cannot imagine a childhood without SPB, listening to his songs. It was like so integral to my childhood. it was so very hard for me to actually hear his, the news of his demise. So since we are on the topic of music, I thought I should acknowledge one of the greatest legendary singers India has ever produced. So before I move on to the next topic, if anybody has any questions, great. If not, I'll move on to the next topic, which is about technology.
Very good, Manoj. Let's move on here. Thanks.
Okay. So as far as I'm trying to focus here on enterprise business applications and the trends, the latest trends I'm seeing. I may not see all the trends, but I kind of at least have observed a few things, at least at the places I have worked with, and also, of course, reading and understanding and learning from other people as well, as to some of the latest trends that are happening with regard to enterprise business applications. When I say enterprise business applications, these are applications that are used primarily in this, to run the business at a very high level, right? To run the business, which is sales, operations, financials, those kind of applications. E-commerce as well, those kind of applications. Now, one of the key trends, these are 4 major trends. I'll go through each one of them. But at a high level, they're enabler. Now they're becoming an enabler of rich end customer experiences. And I'll dive a little more deep into that, what I mean by that. Then transformational monolithic applications to microservices, right? So the age of monoliths is gone, and it's now moving to microservices. I'll go into details about that as well. And then this transition from on-premise to the cloud, right? Moving their entire infrastructure and the apps from the on-premise locations to the cloud. And there are multiple cloud providers as well. So that's another major trend. I don't know if I can call it a trend because most of the businesses have already started doing that and pretty much have migrated. And then there is the serverless deployments, the notion of no servers as well. So with that, let me move into each one of them. So as far as enabling rich customer experiences, now these enterprise applications, for about 15, 20 years ago, they were like these hidden factories behind, that the customers never weren't directly interacting with. When I say customers of companies, right? So for example, at Intuit, the company that I worked at, customers buy Intuit software for tax preparation, for small business activities, things like that, right? But they don't know anything about, like financials, Intuit's e-commerce capabilities, none of that, right? So these financial applications, which is essentially an enterprise application or a commerce application, or like a CRM application, these are all applications that are like completely hidden from the customers, right? And so these are primarily used by employees at the companies, right? And they're used for transactional reasons, for analytical reporting purposes, things like that. Now that trend is changing. It's no longer the case. Now the functionality is being increasingly required at customer touchpoints, right? Which means through the apps that the customers use, through the devices that the customers use, or the laptops or voice-enabled devices. What I mean by that is, so if a customer is using a software that is being sold by any software company, for example, that software may be made available through a laptop. It can be made available online. It can be made available, through mobile devices, voice-enabled devices. It doesn't matter. But what is also happening is there are capabilities or functionality related to e-commerce and marketing that are actually creeping into those apps. So TurboTax, for example, if you're going to file taxes, right? If you think about at the very end, when you file taxes, you are charged for a certain amount for the filing fees, for example. Now, that filing fees that you're being charged for a registration is an order. It's basically an order where a customer is charged for that $15 or $20, whatever the customer pays for, right? So what actually you're seeing is that is actually being integrated into the product itself. So what that means is that it's no longer something that's handled back in the backend. It's part of the product itself, the product that the customer uses. And that's the case whether the customer is filing the taxes on a mobile device or a laptop, it doesn't matter, right? So that's a key trend that's happening. So I just used the example of e-commerce here, but it also, you can also see that case, with regard to marketing, or even wanting to reach or talk to a contact center agent, like a call center agent. All of those capabilities are provided within the product itself or the device that the customer uses. Then there is this headless solutions that have emerged. Headless in the sense that usually applications have this user interface that the user interacts with, and then and then there is this monolith that actually sits behind it. All the business logic, the data, and all that sits behind it. But now what is happening is the trend that is emerging is that this standardized user interface and all that is going away. Applications or providers for these next generation enterprise applications, they are providing APIs only, right? So which provides the capability for companies or customers like Intuit, or for that matter, any customer that's buying an e-commerce application, for example, they can build their own custom UI that's best suited for the employee or for the Intuit customer, or for, I'm just using Intuit as an example. But for the customer that actually is, part or using one of the products of that company, for example. So it's the ability to create customized, targeted experience for customers. And now enterprise applications are also are being forced to evolve to supporting that rich experience. No longer can we just throw up, this standardized experience because customers just don't like it, agents just don't like it, and it is not a competitive advantage for a company to have these, standard user interface solutions. That era is slowly vanishing away. Not slowly, I should say, fastly vanishing. And then last but not least is enterprise data. Whether it's e-commerce data, whether it's financials, marketing, contact center data, it doesn't matter. They are an important source of data insights about customer behavior, how they interact with us, because we have to keep customers really happy, right? And keeping the customer happy is crucial to a company's success. So now enterprise applications, they have a lot of data, and that data has to be, tapped, and it has to then be, obviously utilized productively. So now, the enterprise data is also now flowing into data lakes, not just data warehouses. There's a big difference between those. Data warehouses are created only for a specific purpose, but now there is this notion of, data flowing in data lakes. And why data lakes? Because the data structures are unstructured, and then the data keeps changing. The structure of the data keeps changing, even in the enterprise infrastructure. It keeps changing, and so there is this avenue for machine learning and these products that rely on machine learning to understand and learn about how the data is evolving, and thus craft new tactics to learn about customer behavior, and then learn new insights, right? So thus enterprise data is a crucial enabler of rich customer experiences. There is much more, but I just thought I'll highlight some of the key points here that I've noticed and I've learned. Now the next thing is transformational monoliths to microservices. So what I mean by monoliths is, these are those traditional applications with a lot of distinct business logic, but they're packaged together, and then deployed as a monolith, right? Maybe 3 to 4 WAR files, jar files, and then they are just packed using just one database, right? And this is traditionally how applications, whether they have been built, or COTS applications. What I mean by COTS applications is commercial off-the-shelf applications like you buy from Oracle or from Siebel, Salesforce, Elastic Path, these big companies, right, that they sell these enterprise applications. They are all monoliths. and they have traditionally been monoliths, but they are trying to evolve, and they have to evolve to maintain a competitive advantage, right? So these are the monoliths, and now and deployment may be easy because you just have 4 or 5 files. You just have to deploy them to the to the destination servers or whatever. But they're a huge hurdle when it comes to making changes, right? For agility. And nowadays, making changes, we have to be very responsive to customer changes or customer requests, and making changes and deploying them, testing them is just and the ability to continuously deploy them is extremely important. With monoliths, that becomes extremely hard because all of this business logic is packed into 3 or 4 files, and that's it. And there are so many people working on that product, and it becomes very hard to scale it for throughput and performance. And changing the tech stack of that product or migration to newer versions, etc., becomes very difficult over a period of time. Especially after these apps become successful after a period of time, it is important that they are migrated to the latest versions, because the companies like Oracle and Siebel and all these other companies that make these apps, make these products, they will obviously keep evolving their products that they sell. So we also have to stay in tune with that, and then make sure that our products that we use, that they sell, that we use, are also up to date with the latest version, right? So so these are the challenges with monoliths. So hence, now what is happening is there is this evolution, or I should say transformation of monoliths to microservices. And in this case, that business logic that I was talking about in this monoliths is now being decomposed, meaning into smaller services, right? So there's distinct business logic, and it's easy to it's easily possible to identify what the distinct business logic is, like for maybe for placing orders, for identify customer data, identify customers, things like that. You can have specific services for specific things like product pricing, things like that, right? Now there are different microservices that can be isolated and can be decomposed and developed from those. Each of these services, right, they will implement well-bounded business logic. Each one will expose its own APIs, and those APIs will be consumed by other microservices or applications, and it makes it easier to develop them, right? Develop them, maintain them, and you can have a dedicated team as well. It doesn't have to be a massive team, just a small team that actually is dedicated to maintaining that microservice or a set of microservices. And it enables the ability to provide user-specific or device-specific experiences, right, per service. And then at runtime, service instances can be run on containers or VMs, and you can just distribute them, on multiple instances. You don't have to, deploy that entire monolith, so to speak, on so many, server instances. And a lot of flexibility to choose different tech stacks, even across the microservices, even though they are collaborating and delivering on a common outcome. But you have the flexibility of choosing different tech stacks, server types, and making high availability deployment choices, right? And then the inter-services communication also may be via asynchronous messaging. So that's also possible. And then independent teams, they can own their services, enabling greater agility, which I briefly touched upon a little earlier. Krish, how are we doing on time? I just want to make sure I'm not confused.
Yeah, maybe another 10 minutes. Is that how many more slides you have, Manoj?
Yeah, so I have a few more. So I'll quickly, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think 10 minutes will be good. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Manoj.
So then the next trend is, on-premise to cloud, right? What I mean by that is it's on-premise applications. In companies have their own data centers, and then they have their own, computing platforms, like all the server infrastructure and all that is in their own data centers, and that is, managing that, and that's how it has been traditionally. Almost all the companies. But if you think about like smaller businesses, right? Small businesses around like large companies that cannot afford to do that, right? So, but these large companies do have the ability to do that. They have large data centers. But now what is happening is it's not becoming a competitive advantage. It is becoming a pain with the especially from a management perspective, and also from a cost perspective and things like that. It's becoming a significant problem if the company continues to rely on its on-premise infrastructure or on its own data centers. So the new trend is now that the companies are moving, are abandoning their, so to speak, their on-premise infrastructure and then moving to the cloud. So relying on the cloud providers that are really good at it, like Amazon, for example, or Microsoft's Azure, or Google's own cloud, right? So these are standard platforms that do this really well. So it makes no sense for companies to be investing in their own data centers and their own computing platforms when there are these cloud providers that do a much better job at much lower costs. So some of the few benefits, right, is primarily the cost savings related to maintaining this globally scalable computing resources. Then cheaper storage, fewer hands-on IT resources. You don't need dedicated IT resources. That volume goes down a lot. There's no space or power considerations because you don't need to have your own data center or you don't need power and all that. It's all entirely handled by the cloud provider. And then there are a lot of better efficiencies due to auto software updates handled by the cloud provider, whether it's related to the operating system, security, network, doesn't matter. They're handling all of that, right? So it's not a problem for the companies that are that have their software or their apps or their service deployed in the cloud, unlike when they were in the data centers. And then there is the anytime, anywhere access to apps and data, better security, definitely better security. The cloud providers have upped the game when it comes to handling security, because it's not just the apps, it's also the data. And there is a lot of private data that's being stored in the cloud. And so cloud providers have to be at the top of the game when it comes to ensuring better security. And so they are. So it makes no sense for a company to be investing in all of that. So cloud provider provides a significant advantage. Then there is a faster deployment, right? Minimizing delays to procure and securely setting up the computing resources. It's much easier with cloud providers. And if you want to scale to another region of the whole world, like if you want to scale to, let's say Asia Pacific, for example, let's say from the US to Asia Pacific, it's not that a big deal at all. It's so easy to scale when you just have, and the cloud providers they provide such a massive advantage in that regard. Serverless deployment. So this is another key trend. And I don't know that many companies have already started, but some have already. This again applies only for cloud deployments. Again, assuming that the companies have migrated their apps to the cloud, there is the option of not having to specify specific, the server resources or pick the servers that you want, whether or the type of apps, type of servers you want to pick for to deploy your apps on. None of that. All you have to do is specify a few specific runtime parameters, right, for the cloud, for that particular cloud, for your app, so to speak, to the cloud function. A cloud function is something like AWS Lambda, Azure, or Google Cloud Functions. These actually are handling the entire, hiding the server aspects of it from your app. And all you're doing is providing specific parameters to these functions, so to these leading solutions, like where you actually specify these parameters related to performance, high availability, throughput, etc. And these functions will essentially take care of how to provision the service completely. It's none of your business. You don't have to worry about that at all as a company. That's this new trend, and it's catching on fast as well. And it ensures maximum performance, high availability. When I say high availability, it's not like active, passive across regions. It could be active across regions across the world, and massive throughput as well. And all of that is handled entirely by these cloud functions. So, and all the three providers of solutions that I mentioned here are pretty good at it. And the costs for the company that are using these is based on consumption of the runtime computing resources, right? For each request, whether it's usage memory or the transaction requests per second, things like that. And these are ideal for microservices. So if companies migrate from the monoliths to microservices, using serverless deployments becomes so easy. That is why it becomes critical to identify the right services to maximize the benefits of serverless deployments and then improve cost effectiveness. So there is a theme to this whole thing, is that relying with monoliths, or sticking with monoliths is not good for you as a company if you really want to compete in the market. So it has to be nimble, and that comes with microservices. And then what adds more to the efficiency in terms of evolving your infrastructure and your product and your company is moving to cloud and the use of cloud features. So this theme is actually catching on fast. And this is a worldwide thing. This is not just relegated or isolated just to the US. It's happening all around the world. That's it, Krish.
Wonderful. Thanks, Manoj. Maybe you can stop sharing. Then I'll put it in the. This is wonderful. Thanks a lot. I think that I enjoyed it, especially the way you started with music and then slowly got us into the technology. As you know, IGL is all about music and technology. We value both. We believe one will help the other, and we also are interested in the intersection of the two. One aiding the other and stuff like that. So I definitely collected a lot of points. So maybe when we come to the group panel discussion, I'll ask you a few questions. Clearly on the rich customer experience, impact on the AI, ML side, the automation, security, privacy. I think you touched upon a lot of the important technologies, especially in the enterprises, and it was very, very, very useful. And it was very crisp. And like I said, we'll come back and talk about some of the technical aspects of it once we complete all the other presentations. Again, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing all of that, Manoj. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, so now we'll ask Mr. Ragu Subbiah to please come on the stage and share your presentation. Ragu, please take it away.
Thanks, Krishna. Are you guys able to see my video, my presentation?
Yes. If possible, put it in the presenter mode if it is possible. Presentation mode, I think slideshow mode.
This one?
Yeah, perfect. Very good, Ragu. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Krishna, for giving me an opportunity to address the young students. So again, today we'll cover about best practices in distributed software development. So with that, this is going to be the agenda for this presentation. Short introduction about myself. Then what do we mean by distributed software environment? Why do we need? What is it for? How do we go about doing it? And some kind of question and answer if audience has any questions. So I think we briefly touched upon this. So I am Ragu Subbiah. I've been working in this industry for about 30 years. In the last 15 years, I've been closely working with Krishna. And currently I'm based in Bangalore, yes. So distributed software development. So this basically they shouldn't be confused with the distributed software process or something that is more to do with hardware, multiple CPUs, and so on and so forth. But this is basically, we are talking more in terms of geographically distributed software design and development centers. And this has been going on for so many years. So pretty much everyone should be aware of it. I think this happened even in '85 when I was in Wipro. I think very first, I still remember a couple of Wipro engineers were sent to Intel for the very first time, probably in India. I think 88, 89 timeframe. Then I think actually the whole thing picked up from 2000 onwards. Y2K and advent of improvements in telecommunications and so on and so forth that basically accelerated the whole process. So this is what we are talking about it. So it could be for one company, or it could be for one company working with multiple companies, and so on and so forth. So broadly, it could be offshore and nearshore. Offshore is basically away. It's a different country. So if you're based in US, probably you offshore some work to some other company in China, India, or something like that. Nearshore is possibly nearby countries. If it's US, it's going to be Canada or Mexico or something like that. Of course, each one has its own advantages, disadvantages, and so on. Nearshore, basically the same time zone, no cultural differences, probably the same language, and so on and so forth. I mean, at least Canada and US kind of thing. And on-site and off-site, it's in the same place or different places. And software outsourcing, basically, this is where, the third-party companies, software service providers come into picture. So essentially, you are a company, say, assume that you're an IBM, you're working with Infosys, Wipro, and so on and so forth. This is all we call software outsourcing. Software subcontracting is something similar, but basically a little bit of minute difference in the sense that you're a main company, you work with a company in with some other company, and that company has too much of workload, and then basically works with a third-party company. L&T, for instance, takes a huge metro project, and they are not able to satisfy because of huge workload and so on. They could work with a different company. That's called subcontracting. And the subcontracting folks are directly not exposed to the main customers. So there's a minor difference. So please feel free to stop me anytime, and then I'll be able to answer them. Otherwise, I'll just move on. So if you really look at the advantages of distributed software development, it's basically the better utilization. So when we talk about software outsourcing and so on, distributed software development, for now, I'll basically talk more about what we went through in the last 10, 15 years, part of the company that I work for, Krishna works for. So we are talking probably with the same company, but multiple engineering centers in different places. For instance, we have centers in India. We have a small center in Japan and Korea. And of course, we worked with 1 or 2 individuals based in Europe. So this is a collective experience that I'm talking about. So the better utilization of resources. So hire the best available resources across different geographical regions. So you don't have to restrict yourself to finding somebody who's got a green card, a citizenship, or something in the US. You just pretty much, the entire world is your pool. You go find the best of the engineers, assuming that you have the setup ready. Quicker scale up. We have seen it in our places. We work with 2 telecom operators, and the third guy is also interested in your work. Then all of a sudden, your work is kind of going to go up. Then we need similar expertise engineers. So how do we get? Sometimes it's really hard to find, especially the space that we are in, to find all engineers based in Silicon Valley. So sometimes it's easy to find in Bangalore, or Kochi, or Calcutta, or Korea, or Japan, and things like that. So this has been our experience. Then the other major factors is obviously cost arbitrage. Even now, even though the prices have gone up in India, still I would say probably like 1/3 or 1/4 of what a typical engineer in Silicon Valley would cost is what does Indian cost us. In some cases, it's better customer service. We have seen it in our case. We are in a software product development based on IMS, which is basically a IP multimedia subsystems. We put it on the phone, then we need to test on the live network, Verizon or AT&T or somebody. And this is having centers across, especially India and places like US, where you have almost 12 hours time difference. Pretty much we are able to cover 24/7. So we have an engineer in the lab sitting there, starting his time at 9 a.m. He goes till 6 p.m. Then he hands off. Then the engineer in India takes over, and so on. So pretty much we are able to utilize 24/7 of the lab availability, because the lab availability comes at a cost, and also kind of hard to get. You probably are given only about 2 weeks time and so on and so forth. So it's up to you to qualify your software in as many devices as possible in those 2 weeks. So those are the critical times where, all this distributed software development centers, having engineers across centers with similar expertise definitely helps. Closer to customers. This is also from direct experience. We have worked with the largest telecom operator in Japan, and having a Japanese center there has been of immense value. The local language, local culture, and so on. So it's kind of hard to sit in the US and work with Japan team, Japan time, with all the communications and so on going back and forth. It's always better to have some team based in Japan or Korea to cover Korean market, Taiwanese market, and so on and so forth. So these are the major advantages, I would say, of having centers across different places of the globe. Any questions so far?
Ragu, I had just one question.
Yeah.
So for the, you mentioned your team in Japan, right? Is that supporting customers only in Japan or in other Asian countries as well?
So basically, we started as a support team, and off late they've been helping us with some product development, not across multiple lines, but they are expertise in Japan centers and doing some of the product line for us. And if we are, if you find it too many tasks piling up in the Indian centers, we basically work with the Japanese center, and they are able to pitch in. And their main focus would be support. But as and when they find some free time, and when we have too much work to distribute, and they step in and help us.
I see. And so you have people that speak multiple languages as well?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll cover some of it. Though, Japan team has multiple members, not all of them are well versed in English, but we do have a manager who can speak fluent English and fluent Japanese, and he is the interface to us.
Okay.
And other people are written English is okay. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. If not, let's move on to this. So distributed software development at start. So for anybody who wants to do, I'm sure a lot of companies have been doing this already, but if anybody, this is for addressing students who would be exposed. Or probably they start up some company where they want to kind of get help from a different place. How do we go about doing it in a better way so that, what are the lessons learned? How do you use some of the best practices put in place so that you face fewer hurdles? So plan how to divide work effectively. Basically, the first point and second point, modular product structure, they'll come into play. For instance, even in our experience, we have found our teams in Korea, basically, for some reason, we've been very lucky to get engineers who closely work with platform. So, any lower level device drivers work in Windows or Linux, Android, we basically find them super efficient in those things. So if you have our software basically has 3 layers, the UI, then the middle layer where you have the whole protocol specs implemented, it's the meat of it. Then you have the lower layer that basically interfaces with the hardware. So for any of this lower layer, you basically go to them and, they're super efficient. They're able to complete them on time or even before time. So these are all the things that happen over a period of time. You get exposed to the teams, you find out what their strengths are and so on and so forth. And you kind of allocate, and basically it makes your job as a manager easier. Then minimize the need for communication between sites, however, maximize the ways to communicate. So what I mean is, as a manager, as a supervisor, as an overseer of the whole thing, you basically, distribute modules as and when it's possible so that, the team in, say, for instance, Calcutta or Bangalore, they kind of work in a solo and very minimal interfaces needed on a day-to-day basis. maybe they get in touch with once a week or so on and so forth for some integration issues and so on and so forth. But meanwhile, you all, as a manager, you basically provide all the ways to communicate. Either they can call somebody at any time, they can approach somebody at Skype anytime. Basically, of course, the email is there. These are the ways that you need to encourage as a manager for the communication across different teams. And of course, it's always helpful to have a project manager or a team leader at every site, so that there'll be the common interface across different centers, as opposed to every team member getting in touch with every other team member and so on and so forth. Sometimes it's not very optimal way to do. Then arrange needed tools, starting from compilers, linkers, assemblers, debuggers, and everything. Make sure that you have the same version available across the center so that you don't run into any of the hidden problems. Oh, this compiles for me, it gives a linker error somewhere else and so on and so forth. So it's better to have the same version across your different centers and make sure those problems are avoided. Then the hands-on training on a need basis. You may not be able to do it for every project. Some of the cycles are very short. Maybe, we're talking about something which is just 2 weeks, 4 weeks. You don't have time for elaborate hands-on training and so on and so forth. But as and when possible, if a project were to run for say 3 months, 6 months, a year, and so on, it's better to have a hands-on training to start with. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. If anybody have questions, please let me know. If not, let us go. So these are the challenges, or the kind of disadvantages for distributed software development. Of course, you have greater control if you have everybody under one roof. You see them face to face. Less chances for communication errors and so on and so forth. But again, that's not optimal way to do it, especially considering the teams are huge and your product lines are big and your delivery time is very short and so on. You need to go distributed development approach. And these are the challenges. And of course, you have challenges, but you have opportunities as well. And then you have ways to find how to overcome those challenges. So communication, we have seen a major difference. Not everybody speaks English, though the English is a common language. And there are ways to overcome. I'll address some of it. Then, of course, you have the time zone differences. I've seen even people say, hey, it's 10 p.m. already. Why do we have 10 p.m. call every week? But then you find some common ground. If there's a team in India, team in US, then keep shifting every week. So 1 week we have night call, the second week we have the day call, and so on and so forth. And then the cultural differences. Again, we know in some other cultures, say Asian cultures, Japanese cultures, if you were to address a team in Japan, and if you were to ask questions, they may not be very forthcoming. They kind of think it's a discussion, it's more like an argument, and it's in their cultures disrespectful to talk against somebody who's older to you. But this you may not see in the US, and to some extent, I think it's getting less and less prevalent even in India, because we are also exposed to US market here. So these are the differences that you see, then you kind of find ways to overcome. You encourage people to talk, encourage people to give you feedback, and so on and so forth. You kind of do. And this obviously helps in motivational issues, address some of the motivational issues. When I say motivational issues, if you have different teams in different places and you have a few junior engineers joining you, and they may not see the bigger picture. So they may not be very clear about what is their level of contribution, where do they stand in the overall picture, and so on. So as a senior leader of a company who oversees the whole project, it's your responsibility to address some of it. The way you do it is basically you have a weekly meetings. We have like, PMT, project management meetings kind of thing, where Krishna gives a, feedback, as well as constant communication. How do we talk to who all we do get in touch with, and customers, where do we stand? When do we get to hear from person A, person B, which company, and so on. So for this kind of motivates, okay, what is it we are doing? Where is it going to be deployed? In a bigger picture, how is it going to really make a difference to people? Especially we are talking about the communication software. That's a line of business that we are in, rich communication suite and so on. So, the most of the above can be overcome by better use of tools. So we talked about communication. You kind of enable email is more formal, audio calls, video calls, you can have it. Then, of course, you have the project management tool, a common tool across your centers, and some other visibility. You put some of the knowledge in the wiki so that everybody, junior, senior, project manager, non-project managers, tester, QA, architect, no difference. Everybody gets to see everything. So be open, transparent, and it kind of provides the way that you do is basically you distribute your knowledge from the main office, the so-called the head office, to different centers across. It could be a testing center, it could be a design center, no difference. Just everybody gets to see everything. Be open. It's after all, software development is what we are talking about. No business confidential news, of course. So, any questions on the challenges that we face? Anybody who wants to add anything more? Anybody who has seen it, different problems, anything? Please speak up.
Maybe we can question. We can come back, Ragu. We'll have a session. That way, we'll be on time. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, understood, Krishna. Move on. Okay, so these are the things from my experience, tips for success and team building and trust. This is a kind of a known path. People have been doing it. If you were to, for instance, if you were to come to Bangalore, you'll see a lot of resorts in and around Bangalore, and people hold, small team to larger day off, couple of days over the weekend, and so on and so forth. This is basically, it's proven psychologically, sociologically, that the teams bond together and you kind of get the better productivity out of the team. In our specific case, I think Krishna used to come at least twice a year, or possibly sometimes even more. And we have sync up meetings, and sometimes it's just kind of, business plus fun in the evening, that kind of thing. So you kind of, if not everybody in the team, at least bring in the senior guys, more like a brainstorming all through the daytime, and the evening you make it more informal. You go somewhere, visit some place, and so on and so forth. And you kind of loosen up, and then people do get an opportunity to meet the other person in person. And we brought in engineers or managers from Japan to places like Kochi, and those days have been very fruitful, actually. Then the frequent and periodical meetings. This is, again, I told you that in our case, we have at least weekly meeting, formal meetings. And then we have informal meetings, like, probably every day, every other day, within the center, across the centers. Even if you different time zones, you kind of, shift around and try to accommodate everyone and so on. And share the information. So it could be formally, informally sharing, like, when you speak, when you address the team over the phone, as well as you formally share it in a document thing. I talked about wiki, or put some document in a Google Drive and then send it across so that people, even if they're busy, they can probably go through that when they have a little bit of off time. Then you kind of provide the feedback. It kind of helps the motivation. This is, again, something related to what I told. Not everybody will have a clear picture of what exactly the company is doing, where the product is going to go, when it's going to be launched, and so on and so forth. So give more feedback, question and answer, be able to address people's concern, and so on and so forth. And it kind of helps the motivation, especially for the guys who joined newly in an organization. Okay. Then again, if you tightly integrate a product line, assuming that you're not able to split your work, very modular basis and distribute across centers, you find that, for instance, Bangalore and Calcutta teams have to work together, try to do the continuous integration, possibly, every day, every other day, if that's not possible, at least twice a week, and kind of automated testing. so that known issues are fished out right at the beginning, unknown issues. You don't want to see them at the very tail end of it. Oh, this is what I understood. Oh, this is what I thought you would do, and those kind of things. So basically, you do as much as done, you kind of try to integrate it. Oh, this is what, oh, could have been this, could have been that. And then the teams kind of, talk it across and distribute and get the things done. Establish peer-to-peer links. So it could be managerial across different sites. It could be product level, project level, or it could be even the team lead kind of things. And establish visiting engineer program. That we have done it in our case. Our engineers from Bangalore often go to US. Sometimes they go to labs, AT&T labs and other telecom operators labs. And even otherwise they do go to different centers. We brought in a guy from Lithuania, He spent about a couple of weeks in Bangalore and he worked with us, and we learned quite a bit from him, and he learned quite a bit from Indian software practices and so on. These are the things that will definitely help manage the teams across geographical locations. And having said that, I think that's about it. So Krishna, as you said, if you have any questions, we can probably address them in the common Q&A session. For now, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ragu. Thanks. Please stop sharing. So I'll bring everybody. Thank you, Ragu. I think you were able to put the people aspect of the technology, though it was the technology was a theme. We were able to learn a bit about, because at the end of the day, no matter what we build or develop, it's all going to be people and how to work as a team and get things done. That was a good presentation. As usual, I collected a lot of notes, so we can cover them in our Q&A session. So thanks again for that wonderful presentation, Ragu.
Thanks, Krishna. Thank you.
Absolutely. So now we will invite Rajan Subramanian. So Rajan, could you please come on the stage and share your presentation, please? Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Let me see here.
Sure.
Can you see my screen?
It's coming up. Yeah, if you can go to the first slide and then put it in the slideshow mode, that'll be great, Rajan.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
How about now?
Yep. Very nice. Thank you.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'll get right into the presentation itself. Let's see here. So I want to, you talked about, IT technology and how to manage projects offshore and what the IT trends are in the earlier presentations. For me, as an operations guy, I want to maybe give you my perspective on where IT is used in operations management. So that said, as far as the outline goes, wanted to touch on the definition of operations management itself, and then what IT systems I have used in manufacturing, and give you some example IT system in manufacturing, and then also talk about what are the recent trends with respect to automation and digital transformation as it applies to manufacturing to improve efficiency and productivity. And then finally, if you happen to take on a role of bringing a new software or a new technology program into manufacturing, how would you go about that? And then I will close with question and answers that may come up. Okay, so operations management, simply put, it basically involves effectively and efficiently managing processes, to produce and distribute products and services. Could be any kind of products and services. In my case, we make chemicals. Somebody else might be making some machine parts that goes into the automotive industry, or someone could be providing engineering services or a consulting services. So for all of these different customer-based output, IT, you would need to have a good system to manage those operations. So, but then we will focus on, my focus would be on production, manufacturing processes as opposed to services. So we'll focus on how IT systems are used in production processes. So if you talk about production, some of the key components of a good operating, of an operating system would involve production planning and scheduling. Then once you schedule your production, the manufacturing process itself, then once you have made the product, you want to ensure that it meets all the quality criteria to meet customer expectations. And then once you have made it and you have tested it, you need to make sure all you're able to maintain your inventory on raw materials and also intermediates and finished goods. And then you need to have a way to manage your suppliers and so on, that help you maintain your supply chain. And then finally, once you have you need to have a good process for receiving your raw materials and also shipping your raw materials. And in our case, we ship our product all over the world, and we need to have good logistics, such as freight companies that actually take your product and take it to the customer, freight forwarders. The products that we make are dangerous goods, so they're considered dangerous goods. So you got to have someone to, especially when you're shipping it overseas, you need to have someone at the other end to not only receive it and then clear it through customs and so on. So it's a pretty complex operation if you think about it, and IT plays a role in each one of those functions. Okay, going to the next slide. And here is an example of an IT system where in order to manage a operations, you need to have like a comprehensive an enterprise resource planning type system that helps you bring all of these IT needs together. For example, if you talk about manufacturing engineering, the engineers are the one who basically enter the bill of material routing where what the product goes through different steps in the process. The assets or the equipment it needs to go through all of that goes into an enterprise resource planning system such as SAP. There are other ERP systems as well, such as maybe could be an Oracle, and IBM has a system as well. So that all of that is managed by these enterprise resource planning systems. These systems are pretty comprehensive. They can also handle environmental health and safety. For example, the material safety data sheets, data information could be in the system. Your maintenance system could be in the same ERP as well. For example, what assets what maintenance equipment that you have, what is their preventive maintenance and repair maintenance schedule, and how do you ensure that your equipment is operated in a reliable and a consistent manner, which in turn affects your product to come out the way you want it to come out. And then as part of that, quality management could also be in the same ERP that ensures all the testing that you would do that is used to generate the certificate of analysis that shows that here are the critical parameters on this product on each batch that you made, and it met all those requirements. All of that reside in the same ERP system. And then there are other aspects which we probably don't want to get into. If you were to outsource some portions of your manufacturing, you could actually put all of that information in ERP. So it gives you like a central place where you can see how all that is needed to run the business and also know how you're performing. It's got all of this data residing in this ERP. So you can also see how well you are running your operations. And yeah, SAP also does a good job on finance, your cost controls as well, all the financial tools to ensure that you're running a profitable business also resides in SAP. So it's like a catch all. It takes on every aspects of manufacturing into the single system. Okay, going down the next slide here. And if you're running, for me, if you're running a plant, there are, as we talked about earlier, the plant has several, functions here. Safety is an integral part of our business. We want to make sure that all the employees are, are safe, and then you don't have any environmental compliance issues. All of that can be tabulated in a metrics dashboard. So when you on a daily basis, you can get a view of where you are, so you know where the issues are, so you can focus on that function or that or a specific problem, and then bring it back from red to green in this case. Quality, the main functions are HC, quality. The delivery is basically part of manufacturing. We also have, it's not quite noted here, but we also have a production run rate. What do we anticipate in making on a daily basis, and did we make that plan on a daily basis, can also be in a dashboard. So if for the management, it gives you a overview of what the key metrics are, and then take actions appropriately. And then inventory and costs are also part of what one needs to focus on to ensure that you're running an efficient and reliable plant. And then we use a system called Team Guru. It's used to see where bring all this key information into a single dashboard, and you can also drill down into each of this in performance, so you can assign resources to ensure that those are being addressed. So another example of an IT system, is relates to quality control. So when you're making a product, you want to make sure that all your processes are in control. So for that, we use something called Northwest Analytical. So where the process data is collected real time, and that in turn the software system graphs it, in relationship with prior batches. So in this case, it shows you where the process is running in terms of upper spec limit and lower spec limit, and also lower and upper control limit. So you can see, if you can see any kind of statistical trends, you can take appropriate action. It also does a really good job of where your red, which processes are running at non-ideal conditions. So an engineer or even a production operator can go in and then drill down and see what might be happening, and then bring the process back to standard. Okay. All right, and here's another IT system example, that relates to maintenance. So when you have hundreds of equipment or assets in the plant, it's important to keep track of what their preventive maintenance schedule is, and then what they how many are there any recurring instances in the same equipment, or the same problem is happening on the equipment multiple times. So you can kind of see if you need to Pareto those failure modes, and then correct them. It also gives you a dashboard on what are the repair type work orders that are in the system, then what resources need to be assigned to address those repair or maintenance work orders, and then ensure that what is your on time to completion performance. All of that can be seen in a dashboard like this. In our most of the companies use SAP, and then sometimes you can also institute a bolt-on software that has a much better user interface than SAP. SAP interface, at least as a user, is not that great. So it's, if you can use a software that gives you a more visual dashboard on how your systems or your equipment is running, you can. It's a lot easier to follow. Okay, and then some of the things that's been happening in the manufacturing area, it's around digitization. Digitization, if you go into a plant, even in my own career, on paper, somebody would write it down on a piece of paper, all the data is on paper, and an engineer would go and collect that paper record. Then he or she would have to manually transfer that data into an Excel or a more digital format for them to analyze it. Well, those days are slowly going away, although not completely, where all the data that is in manufacturing, we're trying to go straight to the digital formats, so it's easy to do something with it. As an example, in our manufacturing processes, we're starting to use tablets more so than paper, where the manufacturing instructions and process data are either being collected automatically from the equipment itself, or if there's an operator or a technician, they are entering the data directly onto the tablet, which in turn can be followed more quickly. That in turn helps us to respond to a production issue and solve it a lot quicker than a paper version. So that also increases the productivity on and then make sure that how quickly you can respond to quality issues and resolve them quickly. So this is the digitization. I believe it's a key step towards industrial Internet of Things. This is where most of the process equipment, they are preloaded with sensors, so that they provide continuous feedback throughout the manufacturing supply chain, including for the folks on the floor, such as the production operators, production supervisors, as well as manufacturing engineers. They can see this data real time and take action on the floor on a daily basis. It definitely increases productivity, reduces scrap, increases the yield, and also increases asset utilization. So you can see, you can avoid downtime by resolving these production floor issues quickly. And the IT systems and the digitization, play a very key role in doing so. So I just wanted to through the slide here, in case if you take on a role of integrating or implementing one of these technologies, as a software engineer or a program manager, how would you go about doing that? The first thing you want to do is to, as you acquire, before you acquire, as part of acquisition, you want to make sure that the system that you're trying to implement, it is aligned with the overall objectives of the organization. As part of that, we need to make sure that there is a clear cost benefit, favorable cost benefit analysis in rolling out the system. And then once you have the approval to implement the system, and then once you are about to integrate this into the plant, into the manufacturing systems, you want to make sure that you have a good rollout plan to ensure that you don't end up with some surprises, nasty surprises, technical issues or any other surprises that you need to go back and deal with. You want to make sure that you do this, you want to do it right the first time. And the way you would do that is, in some cases, you may want to run a pilot system, take on sometimes you could do in SAP, for example, I believe there are sandbox or a duplicate system. It's not, you haven't rolled it out into production just yet, but you can test your systems in a pilot environment, make sure everything is working as intended before rolling that out into production. Another thing I typically do is, get the user buy-in ahead of time. If it's on the production floor, once the system is installed, we want to make sure that it's being utilized at the right level. So that ensures that when you do roll it out, there is a clear buy-in and then utilization at the user level. This will also ensure that the technology that you're rolling out, it's delivering the operational effectiveness. You want to make sure that once it's rolled out, maybe 3 months or 6 months down the road, you collect enough data and analyze that it has in fact delivered the performance you are wanting to you're wanting to gain from this technology. Okay, so based on what I shared before, I also want to share a quick case study. This is real life case study at our plant. Our customers are, what we make is let me tell you quickly about what we make and then how it's used. That way this case study would be a little bit more meaningful. The product that we make is essentially like a high-tech solutions in a bottle. It's a siloxane polymer in a solvent system. It basically looks like water. And then what our customers do it, they take this bottle of liquid, they coat it on a wafer, and then when the solvents are removed, it leaves a thin coating on the semiconductor wafer, and that wafer, that layer has dielectric properties, and that's how the electrical engineers use that to make their semiconductor chip module. So that's a quick summary of the products that we make and also how it's used. Recently, one of the product line, one of the customers that we sent to, they reported that they are starting to see high on wafer defects. So this typically, this would result in for us to go and investigate what may have caused this defects. So what we did is that we looked through all of the digital data that we collected comes in. This is where they come in handy. We can look at raw material properties, all the key process parameters on our chemical processes, maintenance records. Now all of them are stored in digital form, and this data, they on a daily basis they get transferred to a local database. And this is now in the past, in order to solve a problem like this, we would have to go and go through these mountains of paper copies to try to collect this data. So one of my engineers, what she did was she converted all of them into a digital form. Now it's a lot more easier to get to. So the time to react has gone down significantly. So the data that we collected in a database is in turn, is used to is fed to the statistical process control software, so we can analyze to see what and then try to understand which of these parameters might have caused the change in the on-wafer performance, and we were able to quickly find out what changed in the last few batches or so. So we're able to address them and correct them quickly. So by the moral of the story, or the quick summary of that is that we're able to reduce the response time to solve the problem quite a bit significantly than what we used to do in the past. So that's a quick case study, so that you can relate to how all the work that all the systems that are there at the end of the day, it translates to a higher customer satisfaction, higher quality product, therefore a higher customer satisfaction. So that's the end of my my quick presentation here. So Krishna, if there are any questions, I'll happy to answer. Yep.
Definitely. Thanks, Rajan. That was a wonderful presentation. Please stop sharing now. So yeah, I have been getting questions from the audience in the YouTube as well. So we can go through some of them, and then I have my own questions as well. So what we'll do is we'll get all the speakers onto the stage. So I'd like to invite Manoj, Ragu, and Rajan. All three of you, please come on the stage. First of all, Rajan, that was a great presentation, especially Ragu and I. We used to work at Silicon Graphics in the manufacturing division of Silicon Graphics. So we could relate to some of the things that you talked about. We were making the mid-range computers, the graphics cards, and all the related electronic that went with it. So we were responsible for some of the manufacturing software that goes in that went in the Silicon Graphics. So I think Ragu and I could relate some of those. The yield and the return time and the quality and all the processes, it made a lot of sense to us. So thanks for that. And then especially the last case study was quite meaningful. Thanks for that presentation. So what we'll do now is maybe among yourself, if you have any questions, I'll start asking each one of you. You can have kind of a discussion around questions for others among three of you, and then I have collected questions from the audience as well as my own little questions as well, so we can go through them in that fashion, and then we'll of course ask folks in the Zoom meeting, Meena, Rajan, and Gokul Kaladharan as well to say a few words about today's seminar and ask questions. So that's the order in which we'll go. So we'll start with Manoj. Any questions, comments, feedback on Ragu or Rajan's presentation from your standpoint, Manoj?
Only one for Rajan. Rajan, you mentioned about the process sensors, right? Can you give me an example? I'm kind of trying to get my head around it. Like,
sure. I can. One of the examples could be the manufacturing area where we make our product. Part of the analysis we did in the past, we realized that the temperature and humidity of the area affects the product performance. So what we did is that we installed temperature and humidity sensors with different locations in our manufacturing floor. So that data is automatically fed to our building control software, and then the temperature and humidity, for example, is plotted on a daily basis automatically. So if there is and we put in control limits for the temperature and humidity sensor. So if that is outside of the control limit, it will automatically send a text to the engineer, the mechanical engineer who's in charge of, as a simple example. Then he would go and work on the HVAC system, whether it's air handler or exhaust fan or maybe it needs to be maintained better. So he'll bring the temperature and humidity back to the spec, as an example. So we are preventing a quality excursion by reacting to that quickly. And then many of our chemical, the actual reactors, they have what we call distributor control systems. So basically PLC, and then you actually have a graphic user interface, so you can see the reaction progressing in real time. And then we have temperature and reaction profile, where the temperature follows the time temperature profiles. So if there is a slight change in the reaction profile, we would know that the reaction isn't progressing how it's supposed to. Then you can take corrective actions and potentially avoid scrap, as an example.
Okay, got it.
That's wonderful. I think a follow on that's a wonderful question, Manoj, as well as a response from Rajan. I think a related topic that we have been seeing these days, especially the industrial IoT that Rajan you talked about, and then Manoj, you talked about the cloud aspect of it, right? A lot of them today, the data needs to be processed locally for the sensors, but a lot of the times the data eventually go to the cloud. And then now these days, the edge computing is becoming a hot topic in the industry, where the local processing and the decision making happens locally, because as Rajan pointed out, a lot of these things have to be done in real time. You just don't have the time. You don't have the millisecond latency to go to the cloud and come back for your analysis and response. So a lot of these things happen in the edge. And so this is something that we have been focusing on. Actually, for one of the projects at IGL, we are offering students to do edge prototyping. So collect some of these sensors and then create an edge gateway in the manufacturing plant. So some of the colleges, Rajan, to give you an example, some of the colleges we are working with, we're asking them to create a simulator plant in their department, and then they can create. These days these sensors are easy to find. I mean, not like the sensors that you're talking about, whether it's a temperature sensor or a humidity sensor. These days you can buy them on Amazon. You can connect them to a Raspberry Pi. You can connect it up to Amazon IoT cloud, and you can have fun with it, right? I think this is something that we are promoting in the colleges, and basically encouraging them to create a simulated a manufacturing environment in the colleges, so they can understand what the problems might be, and then try to innovate, and that's so some of the things that you shared with us is quite useful for the college students to get an idea of how to do that. And then there is definitely commonality in what Manoj talked about and you talked about, so that's quite interesting.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Ragu, any questions, comments to Manoj or Rajan from your side based on their presentation?
No questions. Comment to Manoj. I would definitely be interested in listening to his songs, some of his songs. I'm sure somewhere there in the YouTube or one of those videos. I'll definitely be interested. As for Rajan, the software that you're showing, all the graphs and everything, is it all in-house software, or are there any commercial software involved? If so, who are the leading players in this arena?
Yeah, I can't speak to who the leading players are, but I can at least touch on the software system we are using. SAP. Most of the big companies use SAP, so we do use SAP. Even in my past job and my current job, we use SAP a lot.
The manufacturing module.
Pardon me?
Manufacturing module or something.
SAP no, it's comprehensive. We use it for everything. So, even on the support functions like finance and
HR,
quality for sure. HR, I think PeopleSoft is probably leading more. I think anyway. It's probably a better software for human resources system. There are also for HSE. There are other software systems that we use where you track the audit compliance calendar and all the regulatory things we got to do. So those are all outside of SAP, but SAP is used a lot. So that's one. And then the other thing I showed is it's called Team Guru. You can actually look it up. It's actually a company. There are other companies like Microsoft has has an equivalent version of what I shared here. So it's like a metrics dashboard. So for example, in our company, right, we have plants all over the world. Like my boss that I report to, he's responsible for plants across the world. So in order for him to know how each of these plants are working, where does he need to put his time on, right? So you have all of these different plants in a dashboard. If all the plants some plants are running at a green metrics, you know what? Don't worry about it. Let's go work on plants where they may have some struggles, and then it cascades to the next level and next level and so on. Right. And then and the other systems have, quality system has the different software systems. So IT is used everywhere, right? IT is critical for in order to function well. IT systems are very critical.
Thanks.
Very good. Great question, Ragu. Thanks, Rajan. Rajan, any questions to Ragu or Manoj on their presentation on ERP and software development? Anything that would you like to questions, comments, feedback? This will be the time.
No, not so much questions, but I learned a lot from Manoj's presentation and also Ragu's presentation. from Manoj, they are telling us to go to the cloud, like for example, right? The IT
Yeah.
guys are telling us to go to cloud. But even though Manoj assured us that the security is sound, we do worry about it. For example, many of the stuff that we do is IP sensitive. So some of the formulations and chemistries and that we use is IP sensitive. So we do worry about storing that in cloud. So we have both. We have servers for some cases, and then we use you know, uh, the cloud system in some cases. So that's for Manoj. And then as far as Ragu, it's good to see or hear about the challenges that he would face trying to integrate teams from across the world and language and cultural barriers. I mean that's pretty quite. I would assume that it's quite challenging to bring everybody together, make sure they're all motivated to do what and then perform at a high level. That's quite challenging. That could be quite challenging.
Yeah.
Very good. I think picking up on what you just left, Rajan, on the security aspect of it. It's I mean, we at our company also we have this conversation about how much we want to store in the we do have a data center, little place where we keep our software, and then how much we want to keep it on the cloud. It's always a tricky situation, but I think these days what is happening is. I think Manoj touched upon it. There are people who believe that cloud is more secure than on-prem. Of course, it depends on the business, depends on the enterprise, depends upon what data that you're storing and all the information. But I think the trend is really going in that direction. But in our company, we're not made that switch yet. We're still a small company, but we're saying, hey, for us, it's a golden jewel, right? We cannot let that go out. So we still have this hybrid model of keeping our source code in a centralized data location, whereas everything else can be on the cloud. So that's an interesting conversation. Anyway, so I've collected some questions. So maybe I'll start with Manoj. So I think you talked about the rich customer experiences, Manoj. I think that was a good topic. I think IGL, we also offer, as you know, for students, AI ML based chatbots. So these are all about how to engage the customer. I think that is certainly an interesting topic that you brought out. There was some question about data security and privacy. I think we covered some of them. So anything would you like to add? I mean, what are the recent trends that are going on in the cloud on the security and the privacy part of it? Anything that do you think this is it, or is it always going to be a catch-up game? Right, there will always be people who will hack into and steal information, and we've heard so many stories. Target, several million people lost their credit information and so on. So, what are your thoughts from the enterprise security point of view or the privacy point of view?
I mean, there is always this fear. Obviously, it's genuine. I mean, you can't disregard that. So this fear of people actually having to, or companies, trusting these cloud providers with the data. But at the same time, what is happening is, so it takes a lot of effort on the part of the cloud providers to gain the confidence of companies to trust them with the data. But what is happening is there is a slow transition. Definitely, it's happening. Cloud providers are providing capabilities to secure the data and ensure the privacy. The other thing is they're also solving it in a manner that applies to all the providers in the cloud, and all the clients in the cloud, right, that have the data. So, for example, think about GDPR, the EU's,
the European side,
So if that requires enforcement of certain like privacy requirements, for example, or security requirements, it can be easily baked into the infrastructure, right? Because you're using cloud infrastructure. Like if it's baked into the cloud, so then you don't have to do as a company, you don't have to waste time and on that, because the cloud provider has already taken care of it. As an example, so. Now what is happening is when they have more and more clients going into the cloud, they have to improve their game. And so because they are entrusting, customers are entrusting the cloud provider with all this data and all that, so they have to definitely improve their game, and they are doing it. And so what happens is they are raising their level of service multiple notches, to the degree that it makes no more sense for customers to keep everything locally in their own data centers. So it is definitely, the trend is definitely there.
Moving there, yeah.
Concerns, but those are well-founded and definitely valid concerns. But the transition is happening.
I think you're right. I think the enterprises are also beginning to realize that security is always is a cost versus benefit equation, right? So as more and more incidents happen, or more and more sophisticated attacks come in to steal your data, your security systems are going to be even more complicated, sophisticated, and it's going to be more costly. And why do you want to take on that additional cost benefit and still not be sure whether it is secured or not? The physical security is one, but I think Rajan talked about, digitization is a word, right? That is the name of the game. The paper-based approaches are all gone, so everything is going to be digitized. And once it is available in a digital form, it is subject to attack and can be stolen. So that is becoming a problem. So yeah, I think we'll wait and see how much when that pendulum will swing on the other direction. People will say, yeah, I don't want to store it in my local location anymore. I would rather keep it in a secure place and then take it from there. Wonderful.
If you think about software updates, right? Let's say your infrastructure is on the cloud, your data is there, so the software updates are automatically handled by them, right?
Exactly.
Why would you, right? So it's all taken care of automatically. They'll always ensure that it's on the the latest and greatest
of the encryption algorithms. Yeah,
as far as concerned. So there are a lot of advantages like that. Then the customer doesn't have to worry about all of those things, because they are maintaining in their data, it's in the cloud. So advantages like that. So
definitely, I think I still remember in the early days of security, we had 128-bit encryption, 256, 512. Now it is like 4096-bit encryption. So if you want to bring in latest encryption techniques to protect your data or the transfer of data over the wire, you need to have those latest algorithms, and rather than every company go and implement them, if it is implemented in the cloud, then everybody benefits from it. Yeah, they're very good. Excellent. So I have a question for Ragu. So in the COVID-19, right now everybody is working from home. So how does that impact your offshore distributed computing model? I mean, what do you see? Is it helping or is it hurting?
Krishna, in our environment, we basically see no difference. As you know, in the Bangalore center, at least as far as I know, we have senior members who have been working with us for 10, 15 years, and we're pretty much used to working from home. And even other centers, we still have, as I said, we use all the tools that are basically available. And as far as we are concerned, whether they are in the lab, sitting in the lab, maybe, some of the access to lab is restricted. I think we've seen it in some cases where people are not able to go attend some, lab tasks and so on. But as far as the software development is concerned, I don't think any difference at all. We have said, people work from home, then absolutely there's no loss of productivity or anything like that's happening. And if we are locally, we make it a point to meet, maybe, with the social distance and so on, maybe, informally once a month or something like this, just to catch up on a few things. But otherwise, I don't see any productivity loss at all. I mean,
got it.
In fact, I think my other evidence, I hear from Paru, my wife, and so on, is if anything, it has actually gone up. She basically goes to the room at 8 o'clock and comes back only 9 p.m. And quite a bit of work, and there's hardly any breaks in between. So I don't see any productivity loss at all. I mean, in our environment,
Very good. So yeah, there was a question for Rajan from the audience. So use of mobile. So I know, Rajan, you talked about tablets being used in your plan for collecting data, which is quite useful rather than taking in a piece of paper. How are mobile phones used? Are they coming into your process as a tool, or not yet?
I think we're using, I would say, we're using tablets. In some cases, the plant has solvents in them, so we have to use explosion-proof tablets. So you can't use
Sure.
a phone unless the phone itself is an explosion-proof phone.
Okay.
So we use tablets more than the phone. Where phones could be used is, let's say, the example I gave about temperature. When the temperature goes out of spec, for example, that text or a phone call
Exactly.
comes to your mobile phone. For example, we store our products in a freezer, so the temperature is monitored by a telephone system, by a phone system. So it'll actually call you and then tell you what the temperature of the freezer is at any given time, and then it gives you real-time data. So in the middle of the night, let's say the freezer, one of the compressors went down, it'll actually call you at home. You have to get up and go fix it. Yeah.
So
So that's basically it. So tablets are a lot more useful.
sure. Sure. So it's mainly for alerts and notification and
Yeah.
things like that, rather than in any mainstream process.
Tablets are a lot useful because in the past a
Because
technician would carry a piece of paper with
yeah,
with all these process parameters, and then he would go write it down. Then even if you want to digitize it, you have to go and type all of that in a
correct.
computer in a different system. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just type it
Okay.
directly into this, and then the engineer who's watching the data will get it right away.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
instantaneous.
Exactly.
Yep.
Very good. Great. This time I'd like to have Meena, Rajan, and Gokul to say a few words about today's session and feedback, comments, questions. Please, I'll ask them to say a few words. Meena, from your side on today's webinar. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna Kumar. Actually, wonderful presentation by all three, Manoj, Ragu, and Rajan. Especially, I learned a lot from Manoj's session because it's more of IT, right? And I am a very beginner in the cloud system. So, even in my company also, we are still not there completely yet. But I would say it was a heavily loaded session, and it was wonderfully laid out. Coming to Ragu's presentation, I was, like Rajan mentioned, right? I was literally fascinated by the challenges and the culture, the cross teams, and the time zones, and especially with the recent work from home scenarios, right? How everything is put into place in the distributed system, right? So that was also a learning experience for me. And of course, Rajan's presentation, I know the very basics of manufacturing industry because since I work in IT, but it was really good to know how IT is being integrated and being used in the day-to-day operations and in planning for the production. So it was a wonderful presentation, Krishna Kumar.
Thank you. Thank you, Meena, Rajan, for your comments and feedback. Gokul, Ladharan, from your side, any feedback to the panelists?
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you so much for all the speakers who just joined for this meeting to just provide and educate us about the fields they're in. And actually, thank you so much for finding the time in this pandemic situation and this busy scheduled timing of yours to share this little bit information about your industry and how it's done. Speaking about the webinar, it was like an illuminating webinar for me because there was a lot of information packed. I was not able to process it through my brain. So I just want to watch it again in this YouTube because I was just taking the screenshots of all the presentations that you are sharing, and Manoj sir, Ragu sir, and Rajan sir. Everyone just was. It was like an information. Every page was like a lot of information. Someone says that if someone speak their experiences, just listen to them because for them it's just experiences they're going through, and for us it's a valuable information. And that I got that line true today. And there's a lot of information which I was not able to process through my brain. So I'm just watching it second time actually. And thank you so much for all these wonderful comments and informations that you have shared to us, educating us. And yeah, that's all from my side. And I'm not a person to comment or just question something because your age is my so your experiences is my age. So I just have a lot of journey to go through. And if I reach somewhere, I'll just have a question to all you guys and suggestion from your side. For now, thank you so much. That's all I have word to me. Thank you so much, all. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for letting me in for this wonderful session. I was so lucky to hear it live itself, more than watching it second time on YouTube. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Bring more wonderful session like this, sir. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Gokul. Gokul is from our IGL Palakkad team. He is interfacing with a number of college students out there, motivating them to do IGL projects and then helping them with a lot of the technical activities out there. So we are very fortunate to have him. Thank you, Gokul, for that wonderful word of thanks. So I'll just go around the table, see if there is any final thoughts from each one of you. I'll start with Rajan, Ragu, Manoj. So Rajan, any final thoughts before we conclude today's session?
No, I think, thank you, Krishna, for giving me the opportunity to be of some use, I hope. And, I learned a lot from Manoj and Ragu as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rajan. Ragu, from your side.
Yeah, same here, Krishna. Thanks a lot for providing an opportunity and to be able to address the younger audience and so on. You've been doing a great service. I know I look very formal, but you've been doing a really great service. You keep talking about you. It's great. Learned quite a bit from Rajan, Manoj, and I didn't know. I mean, I heard about Manoj singer, but I couldn't connect this Manoj. I heard about his son. I think Philip Mathew is his son, right?
Correct. Yeah, Philip Mathew. Yeah, Philip Mathew was one of our early IGL technology lead 2 years ago. Yeah, that's right.
I'm glad to know from Meena that Meena and Rajan are a couple. I didn't know. I just guessed it. I just checked with her. Okay, good. So good knowing the people and a great opportunity for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Ragu. Manoj, any final comments from your side?
Just that, it was another example of IGL, proving itself as a platform to not just share or to realize your passion, but also in terms of sharing knowledge and spreading it far and wide. So definitely great. I learned a lot from both Rajan and Ragu today as well. So very illuminating presentations, and appreciate all the feedback from Gokul and Meena as well. And Chris, thanks again for the opportunity.
Absolutely, Manoj. So again, thank you all. Thank you for your time. I know we went over an hour and a half, but I couldn't help asking those questions from the audience, and I'm sure it is recorded and it's also on YouTube. So I'll share the recordings with all of you, and then we will reach out to the college students. If we have any offline questions, then I'll be more than happy to come and talk to you. Please do come back. So this is not the only time. If you have any updates on in your life in terms of experiences, please do keep in touch and do come back and share your experiences. Thanks again. So with that note, we'll sign off today. For folks in US, have a good night, and Ragu and folks in India, Gokul, have a great day and a great weekend. All right.
Thanks,
so we'll sign off now.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye now.
Thank you so much, all.
Bye.
Thank you so much for
Thank you all.
joining. Yeah, bye. Take care. Bye, sir.